As you guys probably know, free agency is on the horizon. The time of recording, it's about 8 days away. I took it upon myself to predict where the top 100 free agents will go. I already have part 1 up where I did 100 to 75. Haven't watched that? Go watch it. This will be from 75 to 50. It'll be from the 75th best player to the 50th. Hope you guys enjoy. 75, Jarran Reed, interior defensive line, Seahawks. Okay, we're at the quarter point. Take a breath. We have the Seahawks defensive lineman, Jarran Reed. For the past few years, the Seahawks have been notorious for having a pretty bad run defense. I don't want to blame it on one person, but Reed has something to do with that. Now, he's a good player, like a very good player, don't get it wrong, but Reed is old, like 32, and has a tendency to struggle against the run. When you look at the Seahawks direction, I don't think it includes a defensive tackle in his 30s, and that's why I have the Seahawks letting him go. They already have cap issues. I do not doubt that they're doing everything to cut costs, and they definitely aren't signing an undersized tackle who's 32 years of age, especially with last year's first-round pick, Byron Murphy II, waiting behind him. I don't want to make it seem like Reed is a bad player, because he's not. Even though he occasionally lacks as a run defender, he's an incredibly disruptive pass rusher that a lot of teams can use, primarily the Atlanta Falcons. They really suck at rushing the passer, and that's not exclusive to their edge rushers. The Falcons could use some disruptiveness from the interior, and Jarran Reed is a perfect fit at filling that gap. Sure, he's a bit undersized, and there's concerns against the run, but they can figure it out. I don't feel like he'll be super expensive too. At the very least, he's a rotational lineman that can rush the passer. 74, Jonathan Jones, cornerback, Patriots. Jonathan Jones is probably not going back. He's not a bad player, but with him aging, he doesn't really fit the Patriots timeline. He's a rock-solid secondary cornerback with very good versatility even at his age, and a lot of teams could use that. I have the Chiefs picking him up. They need some assistance besides Trent McDuffie, and with his age, he won't cost a lot of money either. The lack of consistency in the secondary outside of Trent McDuffie really killed them against the Eagles, and Jonathan Jones is a fine place filler for that. 73, Aaron Banks, guard, Niners. Banks is a decent option for any team out there. He definitely was a fit for the Niners especially. He excels as a run blocker, well above average in that department, which is why he's a 49er. That fits their identity to run the ball. The thing is though, I think the Niners are willing to move on from him. Outside of Trent Williams, this entire line has been lackluster, especially in the pass blocking department. And with how horrid this last season was for the Niners, I doubt they're comfortable with leaving things as is. I have Aaron Banks hitting free agency, and I also have him going to the Dolphins, which isn't surprising. They lost Robert Hunt last offseason, and the run blocking has been horrid this season. Aaron Banks is a match made in heaven for them. He fills the need, won't break the bank, and helps to run block. Now, the pass protection isn't incredible. That'll be an issue, but strides could be made. And he's a guard too, so it's not the end of the world. The truth is, the Dolphins need anything at the guard position, and they don't have Trey Smith money either. Aaron Banks is a guy who could fill the hole and be affordable. 72, Dennis Gardeck, edge, Arizona. He seriously started off great, this season at least. In a contract year, he tallied 6 sacks in less than 7 games, which is his career best. Unfortunately, he blew out his knee in week 7, and that really derailed what looked to be a great season. Now, it's hard to predict what will happen in these types of situations. Having a major injury during a contract year makes it really impossible to predict how the player or the team will react. Usually, I'd like to lean towards them leaving, and that's what I think will happen with Dennis Gardeck. To where he goes, I don't know. His knee injury is still a pretty large concern, and I don't see him used as more than a supplementary piece. I think he'll find himself in a low-risk, high-reward type situation, meaning the opportunity would be more important than any other thing. That's why I have him signing to the Browns. Myles Garrett is gone, most likely, and I'm not saying Dennis is replacing him, but they need something. At the very least, he's a dead piece with incredible potential. 71, edge, Matthew Judon, Falcons. Matthew Judon is not returning to the Falcons. The Falcons traded for him mid-season to try and bolster their weak-ass pass rush, and it didn't work. He was a major disappointment during his tenure on the Falcons, and the Falcons in general were kinda disappointing. As a team, they still have major holes littered around the roster, and I'll give them credit. They tried very hard to fill them with some moves they made. They just failed. Matthew Judon is an example of it. That being said, he's still the same player. He's only 1 year removed from an electric Pro Bowl season on the Patriots. One bad pit stop in Atlanta shouldn't come close to deterring other teams from taking a shot at him. For my prediction, I think he goes to the Lions. The Lions have needed a consistent pass rush for a while, outside of Aiden Hutchinson. They've been kinda barren at the spot, and even when you include Hutchinson, he literally had his legs snapped in half during week 5 of last season. Signing a former Pro Bowler and potentially star pass rusher in Matthew Judon mitigates those issues. Lions have more than enough money to invest in him, and he's not going to be very expensive considering his poor pit stop in Atlanta. Matthew Judon has edge 1 potential. Pair him with Hutch and you have potentially the best pass rushing duo in the league. Secondary options are the Bills, who are swinging big at Myles Garrett, and the Bears, who could use a vet on their defense. 17, Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle, Browns. For the past 2 seasons, injuries have riddled Jedrick Wills. Now, he wasn't an electrifying tackle, but it's tough to gain any form of momentum and consistency with those hampering you. The Browns are definitely looking to achieve a reset of some form, and an injured and already mediocre tackle doesn't fit there. Wills does have some potential though, genuinely. He was a top 10 pick and wasn't the worst tackle ever, which is why I have him heading to the Titans, who, despite being pretty terrible, need to tackle desperately. Willis isn't going to be the savior to their problems or anything, but playing him across from Latham puts 2 tackles who have pretty solid potential in positioning for next season. Shoot, they could even draft one and use Wills as competition next season too. Regardless, the Titans adding Wills to their roster can't really be considered bad. 69, Justin Simmons, safety, Atlanta Falcons. Simmons didn't have the greatest season last year. He signed to the Falcons on a 1-year deal, and as a former Pro Bowler, there were higher expectations for him. Now, he wasn't the worst player ever, but the severe underperformance really hindered the Falcons. I see them upgrading in the offseason, so with Simmons heading out, there are a lot of suitors that can apply for a former Pro Bowler. Simmons is an older guy, so I don't see a team that's rebuilding picking him up. If I were to point to a contender who needs pass coverage assistance, I'd look to a team like the Bucks to sign him. He's a decent, inexpensive option to upgrade their safety room and pass defense. It's not insane for the Bucks to pick up a guy like Simmons. He won't solve all of their problems, but the Bucks don't have money to pour into a guy that will. His ceiling is high enough to warrant investment on him. I could see Todd Bowles breaking him open too. Secondary options are the Lions and the Ravens. Both could use secondary help. 68, Lavonte Davis, linebacker, Bucks. Longtime Buck Lavonte David is set to hit free agency for the 2nd year in a row, and again, I seriously doubt he's going anywhere. David isn't the player he once was, obviously, being 35 will do that to you, but he's still a starting quality linebacker for the Bucks, and I don't see a reason why they would willingly let him walk. I don't see why David would leave too. He's been there for his entire career, so I'll make this simple. I think he either A, retires, or B, signs a new 1-year deal. I don't think he moves to another team. 67, Stephon Gilmore, cornerback, Vikings. The former 2019 Defensive Player of the Year is far past his prime, but this past year for the Vikings, he performed at a solid level, especially for his age. But with the 35-year-old hitting free agency, he's publicly expressed contemplating retirement. I won't be shocked if he does. Now, he's still a very good player and could very easily find work if he wants to, but the question is if he wants to. And I don't know the dude, so I can't tell you, but just to save me some work on basically a 2-hour video, I'm gonna say he's retiring. Secondary options are the Panthers and the Ravens, who could both use cheap secondary help. 66, Jets linebacker, Jermaine Sherwood. Sherwood really stepped up for the Jets last season. He's really moved up through the depth chart over the past few years and has been an excellent role filler for CJ Mosley, who's reaching deeper into his 30s. Sherwood was a lone bright spot on a disappointing Jets defense, and along with Quincy Williams, matched the identity of this team. When Mosley was out with injuries, Sherwood filled his role and took on the green dot, executing it at a surprisingly good level. The Jets have good reason to retain him. CJ is older and could very easily be replaced by Sherwood. Sherwood is in his 20s and also a pretty cheap option. But at the same time, I could see a scenario where the Jets' new regime lets Sherwood go because, well, they're a new regime. He provides value, but the Jets already have a deep enough linebacker rotation that would justify letting him go. The new regime has no allegiance to Sherwood and could very easily just not want him on the team. At the same time, with Sherwood's age and his displayed ability in the past, I could see them instead letting go of CJ Mosley through a trade or something in favor of Sherwood, but I don't think that's very realistic. Sherwood is a high-ceiling player who successfully filled the green dot role on the Jets. Teams could use him as an affordable option. Primarily the Chiefs. The Chiefs are trying to cut costs a lot this season, meaning there's a chance Nick Bolton could leave. Well, with this prediction, it's kind of a spoiler, but Sherwood is a cheaper option who has shown long stretches of high-level play on the Jets. The Chiefs could save money on that. A secondary option would be the Jets just re-signing him or the Seahawks picking him up. 65, Chauncey Golston, edge, Cowboys. A solid piece from the Cowboys that, to be honest, probably won't stay. The Cowboys have far too many people to pay. The CD, Dak, and Micah trio take up way too much cap for them to afford Golston. He's a high-level, rotational pass rusher, very usable to a team who could use another rusher. If you watched earlier in this video, a few slots up, a team lost an edge rusher in free agency. The Cardinals already don't have great edge rush depth, but they lost guys like Dennis Gardeck, making their depth even worse. Chauncey Golston isn't going to solve their problems, but he's a pretty good space filler and proficient against the pass and run. Like I said before, he isn't the problem solver to their pass rushing issues, but he's a very nice piece that could support them without breaking the bank. 64, Patrick Mekari, Baltimore Ravens, offensive line. Mekari was a pretty big piece for the Ravens last season. He was used at literally every spot on the offensive line and was basically used as a Swiss Army knife for the Ravens throughout his career. That makes him very valuable in free agency and could drive up his price a little bit. If Mekari takes a team-friendly deal, he might stay on the Ravens, but that's not happening. He most likely won't. He wants to get paid, and that means he's going to hit free agency. There are so many teams who are intrigued with his versatility. He literally could play every position on the offensive line. And if you ask me where he'd go, I feel like this would be such a Patriots move to make. I know Bill Belichick isn't there anymore, trust me, but with the Patriots needing help all over the offensive line, along with having Drake May to protect, throwing up protection for him is basically mandatory. Mekari isn't big named or a Trey Smith, but he provides usage, stability, and incredible versatility that's hard to come by. Secondary options are the Bengals, who always desperately need offensive line help, and the Packers, who could use some assistance too. Edge, Dante Fowler, Commanders. Dante Fowler is another player who had a bit of a resurgence under Dan Quinn. He tallied 10.5 sacks and aided them greatly in a shock surprise treatment from the Commanders. Unfortunately, I don't see them keeping Fowler. Fowler is an elite rotational edge rusher and proved to be pretty great in a Bryce Huff role, and it wouldn't be terrible to bring him back, but I'm not sure the Commanders would eat the price tag he wants after a 10.5 sack season. Now, I don't know the dude or the talk season with the Commanders, but I think they'll look in a different direction this offseason at the edge position, meaning Dante Fowler will hit free agency. Now, the only team that seems to be linked with him is the Cowboys, which makes sense. In this universe, they let go of Chauncey Golston, and with other edge rushers in free agency, they have to have some sort of help at the position, something Fowler provides. So I'll have them signing him. Secondary options are the Commanders, who could very realistically just retain Fowler, like they have more than enough money to, and the Raiders, who also could use some edge help. 62, J.K. Dobbins, running back, Chargers. J.K. Dobbins was a fantastic comeback story for the Chargers. After being cast aside by the Ravens and absolutely hampered with injuries throughout his career, J.K. Dobbins found purchase on a one-year deal with LA. With Jim and a fantastic offensive line, he found himself being the center of the Chargers' identity this season and one of the big reasons they had the season that they did. I don't really expect the Chargers to let him go after the season he had, though I'm not going to make this long or complicated. I have the Chargers retaining J.K. Dobbins. 61, Zack Bond. Another easy one. The Super Bowl champion Eagles were gifted by the explosion from Zack Bond, who went from a menial pickup on a one-year deal to a Defensive Player of the Year caliber player at the age of 29. I mean, they won the Super Bowl for a reason. After week 2, this Eagles D was shut down. The Eagles for sure want to keep Bond, and I see no universe where Bond doesn't want to be on the Eagles. Another quick one. Bond stays. 60, Zach Martin, left guard, Cowboys. I think Zach Martin officially retired already. I think like a while ago, but I did write a script though. I did write a script for what I think will happen, and I mean, I did predict him retiring, so yeah, I think I'm gonna take the W on that one. Okay. All right, next. 59, Brandon Scherff, guard, Jaguars. Brandon Scherff was one of the best guards in the NFL during his tenure with the Commanders. He moved on to the Jaguars for a couple of seasons where he had fallen off a bit, but still remained one of the best pass blocking guards in the NFL. Now, he's a vet and has a pretty big contract, so I don't expect him to be back with the Jags, but he provides a lot of value to teams looking for cheap offensive line stability. His best days may be behind him, but he's still a starting caliber guard in the NFL, which is why I think the Bengals pick him up. He may not be the game-changing pickup that they had in mind, but throughout Joe Burrow's entire career, his poor offensive line has been his kryptonite. He's been creamed at almost every opportunity throughout his NFL tenure. Adding a well-above pass protector in Scherff is needed to keep Burrow upright. He's pretty cost-effective too. The secondary option is the Chiefs. If Trey Smith heads out, someone's got to replace him, preferably someone who could block for Mahomes. Brandon can for sure be a gap guard in that scenario. 58, Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones has gotten bounced around a lot within the past season. He was on the Titans during training camp, I think, then got traded away from the Titans, then got stuck from week 1 to 8, and then mid-season got traded to the Seahawks. I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm going to pick him to resign. Jones and the Seahawks have already talked extensively about reaching an extension, meaning there's clear and mutual interest between both sides. And when you combine that with the fact that the Seahawks went out of their way to trade for him mid-season, then it's not very hard to imagine a world where he remains. Official prediction: he stays. 57, Morgan Moses, left tackle, Jets. A lot of things failed for the Jets last season. Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, Tyron Smith, but the one consistent and pretty solid thing that remained for the Jets was Morgan Moses. He was a mainstay on that Jets offensive line and one of the better aspects of it. Despite that, the Jets are not interested in re-signing him, which I get. New regime, new culture. The Jets definitely want to reset from whatever this Aaron Rodgers era was, and that does leave a solid left tackle on the market. Now, Morgan Moses is a starting caliber tackle, something a lot of teams, especially contenders, could greatly use. So why not give the biggest contender in the league help at that position? I'll finally give some offensive line help to the Chiefs. The Chiefs desperately need it, especially after the showing in the Super Bowl. They need to replace at least one, preferably both tackles, along with some interior offensive line assistants. Morgan Moses is a step towards that. The Chiefs aren't rolling in dough, and Moses is more than affordable for them, especially if they let Trey Smith go. Moses fills that left tackle spot and solidifies that side from Holmes. That promptly allows Tooney to slide back into guard, and they completely fills 2 more holes for this Chiefs offensive line. 56, Tre'von Moehrig, safety, Las Vegas Raiders. It's really tough to know what will happen to Moehrig. He's coming off of a big year with the Raiders and is due for a new deal. I can't really predict if the Raiders will bring him back, especially with the new regime. I know for sure that he isn't going to be franchise tagged since the $20 million tag is worth more than his projected value. Still, he can be brought back through simple re-signing, and the Raiders have more than enough money to do that. I just have no idea if they will, but if you've watched my past Raiders predictions, they aren't planning on going into a rebuild, meaning I don't see them letting go of talented players, even if it's not a position of utmost importance like the safety. So I think he resigns with them. 55, Demarcus Lawrence, edge, Cowboys. Longtime Cowboy Demarcus Lawrence started off this season electric. 3 sacks and a forced fumble, and 4 tackles for loss in less than 4 games. And then he promptly got hurt for the rest of the season. Despite the injury concerns, Lawrence is a borderline elite pass rusher that Dallas would love to keep. Unfortunately, they just don't have the money to do so. There's way too many people to pay, as I mentioned when I was talking about Chauncey Golston. Lawrence is way too old and expensive to fit under that umbrella. I think he hits free agency. With his age and pass rushing chops though, he's going to be pretty attractive to a contender. And there's numerous contending teams who could use the pass rushing help, primarily the Buffalo Bills. I know they're in the Myles Garrett sweepstakes and this would be a consolation prize, but the Buffalo Bills could desperately use the upgrade on the defensive line. And I know this isn't Myles Garrett, but Demarcus Lawrence is a borderline elite edge rusher and is more than a serviceable upgrade for this offseason. Bills fans would be happy with this addition. 54, Harrison Smith, safety, Vikings. You guys know how these things go. I think it's another Lavonte David situation where he's either retiring or resigning. He's not going to another team. It's Harrison Smith. If I had my money on it, this is going to be his final season. Like, this season is his last season. And he's gonna sign a 1-year deal with the Vikings. Yeah, that's it. 53, Calais Campbell, interior defensive line, Dolphins. I'm gonna make this one quick too. I think this is gonna be the end for Campbell. He signed a 1-year contract, and unless he wants to bounce around more, I think he'll just hang up the cleats and be done with it. 52, BJ Hill, interior defensive lineman, Bengals. Alright, we've had a string of pretty straightforward ones. This one will be slightly more complicated, which that's unfortunate for me. Still, BJ Hill most likely won't re-sign with the Bengals. Not only is he over 30, but they drafted multiple replacements in the past couple of years to prepare for his departure. I'd be shocked if they decide to bring him back. Now, I want to say I could see the Giants reuniting with Hill, and it's a viable option since they do need someone to rush alongside Dexter Lawrence. But with his age, in addition to how poor the Giants are, makes me want to hesitate. I think he has the desire to win now and is looking for a contender to do so. And there's one team who specifically checks the boxes of contender, has enough money, and needs interior defensive line help, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. I think BJ Hill will bolster the 49ers interior defensive line rush. He could be a #1 interior defensive line at his best. So I think the 49ers would love for that assistance in a pretty lacking run defense. A secondary option is the Giants though, for the aforementioned reasons. 51, Azeez Ojulari. Azeez specializes in getting to the quarterback. He's a second-round pick from the Giants who, despite having a limited snap count, was electric for a stretch of time. He notched 7 sacks on limited playing time and looks to hit free agency. As good as that may look, the Giants have a pretty solid pass rush rotation already and don't really have a need for Ojulari. I highly doubt they bring him back if I'm being honest. Azeez has a solid ceiling though. His good production in a limited role may allure some people, but I don't think he'll function as anything more than an edge 3 at the pace he currently lies. I can see him as a cheap option for the Ravens who could use some help off the edge. Now, Azeez isn't going to flip the pass rush upside down or anything, but he's affordable, adds youth, and adds pass rushing chops, and adds a consistent guy who could get to the quarterback. Secondary option are the Chargers, who are getting rid of both their pass rushers and need help in that department, and the Pats, who a young hedge never hurt anyone. All right, that's the end of the video. Yeah, this one another long one. This is part 2. I think part 2 of 4, 75 to 50. The next one will be 50 to 25, and then finally it's just the top 25. Again, definitely the most ambitious series I've tried to do. Like, this is taking like a ridiculously long time, dude. Free agency is in 5 days, so that gives me like a harsh deadline, which it would be really tough to really get it done. But I think theoretically, like, hopefully, maybe I could. Like, I feel like I could get it done before the 10th, but I kind of want it to, I want to give it some space between the video and free agency. I don't want to give it like dropping it out before free agency, so that like adds like an extra layer of a deadline ish. But if you guys enjoyed it, like, do the things. I'll see you for part 3. All right.